Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa. I'm the founder of Cannabis Marketing Association. And today we are doing a whole new format. So for those of you that are familiar with us, or you might be brand new, we are doing an 8-part virtual mini series that is specifically an ask a marketer anything. So if you've heard of an AMA, sometimes they do them on Reddit. But really it's the opportunity to just not be talked at and have your questions answered, even though I'm a presentation person and I did put a presentation together for you today to just help me keep my thoughts organized. But the way we did this is it's a 40-minute AMA. So I'm going to talk for about 5-10 minutes. That's just my take on this topic. And we are looking at everything through the lens of rescheduling. So each week we have a different subject matter, and we look at it all through the lens of rescheduling and how has that changed. I'm doing a general overview today, so I'm going to do my best to answer your questions as much as I can. But if they're really specific, I would encourage you to come to some of the later sessions. Today's session is open to everybody. The other 7 sessions are members only, and we're having them every Tuesday, except for next week. We're going to do Wednesday because of the holiday. So let's jump into it. Can everybody see my screen okay? I got like the double, triple monitor thing, so just give me a thumbs up in the chat. I'm going to assume you can because I tested this. So, and this is our schedule. So between now and mid-July, we're covering all these different topics. Next week, we are talking budgeting essentials. Thank you, Amethyst. We're talking budgeting essentials. So if you have questions around the tax implications, budgeting, numbers, all of that, next week is the time to do that with Guillermo, who is a virtual CFO and CPA. We've had him on the podcast recently. He's very knowledgeable on this topic, and he's going to be talking next week. So, okay, those are our announcements. And disclaimer, nothing I say today is legal advice. Everything is more or less my opinion and my take on the questions based on my experience and what I've heard. It doesn't even necessarily represent any takes that CMA has. This is just Lisa speaking to you as a professional in this space and based on what I know. If you have any nuanced and specific questions about legal issues, compliance, taxes, please contact your lawyers and accountants. They are going to have better answers for you than I will, but I will do my best to give you a good high level today. Okay, and then announcements for our members on the CMA side. Many of you I see here, thank you for joining. We've been working hard behind the scenes for you, and we've got a new product we're launching called Get Cannafax. We will send more information to you directly and that in the coming weeks. But we basically put together a whole separate content repository that takes the scientific studies of cannabis and translates them into layman's terms and marketing language. So really what we're trying to do is help our members reach the canna curious and the canna averse, which the first step for them is often busting the facts. Busting the myths and giving them the facts. So we did that for you. And that's something we update regularly and will continue to do. We will send you more information about that, but that is a member benefit that's coming to you soon. Also, we'll get into this a little bit, but we are coming up on the public comment period for Schedule 3. CMA is going to put together comments in discussion with the members. But we're also going to do a webinar on that soon. I don't have the dates yet, but we will get that to you on what that is, how to do it. Anyone can submit public comments, obviously, and then what role CMA is going to play. And then next week on Wednesday, for all of the members who have been joining regularly, every last Wednesday of the month, we do a new special that's called War Room Wednesdays. And we talk about learn something new. So different best practices in marketing. I report on current events in marketing, both inside and outside of the industry. And then this war room is in the context of business where you can get problems solved strategically. So attendees will present problems and we kind of brainstorm on that call. So that's next week. And then for those of you who are not members, you can listen to our podcast, hear more interviews, and learn more from us. Okay. So quick few minutes on my prepared remarks before we get into the AMA. So I gave, you're going to see a few slides from a presentation I gave. I gave this a few times in a few different venues over the fall about rescheduling and this process. So I just want to do a quick review of what happened, and then we'll talk about what this all means. So Biden made this announcement end of 2022 in October, asking the government to review rescheduling. Rescheduling is a 4-step process that has more or less completed and already happened. Back in the fall, I presented some data on the average time for this to play out based on, this is Aaron Gray's work from Alliance Global Partners, but he looked at all of the reschedulings that have happened. There's been a few, maybe about 5 or 6 that have actually happened over the last 20 years, and looked at the average time between steps to see when we would possibly get an answer. And this all played out, right? And we added up the times, the between steps, what would that mean? And we were looking at an end of June, early July actual ruling from the DEA administrator. Now, we know we have not technically gotten that ruling yet, but we do have kind of an initial word from the government that doesn't happen by accident. So it's not 100% guaranteed that Ann Milgram, who's the DEA administrator, will give this ruling, obviously coming up this summer, but we can pretty confidently say that it's going to happen at this point. And what that looks like is, this is Ann Milgram, she's the administrator, actually makes an announcement. There will most likely be a press conference. We'll see this on TV, and she will officially announce the change on behalf of the DEA. So this is from the fall, but we thought, July is going to be the time. We can probably say May. So I'm very happy to say that this has happened and is playing out. Again, we need that last step from her, but we're in a really good spot right now. And obviously what that means in the context for marketing, I think most significantly, is the elimination of the 280E tax rule. This is the IRS code. Many of you probably already know this, but that says licensed cannabis businesses cannot write off their business expenses, essentially. And one part of that are marketing expenses. So we know budgets in this industry historically have been very low because of that. It's not seen as an investment, so to speak, because from a financial perspective, they can't write it off. So they're paying really high tax percentage to the government, 70–80% sometimes, which makes it very, very hard to run a business and puts a lot of pressure on marketing to get ROI on those dollars right away. Now, again, not an attorney, not a tax professional here, but we have had attorneys in the industry say on the record to industry media that if this does go away this year, it is most likely, or I guess might, and for the tax year beginning already happened. So January 1st, 2024. So even if we get this ruling this summer, it's not like when we go to do our taxes next year, you do it one way for the first 6 months of the year and then a separate way for the next 6 months. Like it would sort of retroactively change. Again, this hasn't happened, but do want to put that out there on what that could possibly mean, which in short, and obviously is saying that we may be, from a tax and business financial perspective, already be operating under a post 280E world. Okay, and why is this important for marketers? So if you've heard me speak over the last 6 months, I keep saying this and talking about these numbers, but I cannot stress this enough. We've done some research at CMA with our members, asking what they spend on marketing and what is that percentage as a percent of gross revenue of their business. And really the number we got was between like 0.5 and 1.5%. So let's just call this 1%. If we want to be generous, we can say 2 or 3. But really it's very low, 1%. So we are saying that cannabis marketers, we are hearing directly from the industry and our members across verticals that budgets are about 1% of annual revenue. Now, for a benchmark, Gartner, they're a national data organization. They do a lot with marketing and marketers, but they have an annual CMO survey where they interview CMOs across North America, across industries, and ask them these questions. And one of the things they ask the same question, right? What percent of your revenue is spent on marketing? And these are the numbers over the years. So if we look at the most recent year, well, historically, the trend is going down and we have some correction around the pandemic, but we're at about 9%. So non-cannabis businesses, non-280E businesses, or those who might be affected by it, right? Like here at CMA, 280E doesn't apply to us because we are not a licensed business, but when all of our members operate under that, it does impact the way we think about and strategize. So these are largely non-280E businesses, 9% of gross revenue. So that means, in theory, if we're, kind of doing apples to apples here, we could have room, broadly speaking, for our marketing budgets to go up significantly from what they are. Now, and I say this broadly speaking because depending on your vertical, whether you are in retail or you sell products direct to consumer or your professional services, that 9% number, it's not a perfect number, right, for everybody. There are CPG products who spend way more than 9%. There are professional services that spend way less than that. But on average, we're talking averages here, 1% in cannabis, 9% otherwise. That is a huge change. That is something we have to look forward to. And I want to talk about what, again, like the conclusions from this. So for marketers who have been operating under strict budgetary restrictions, you have the opportunity to, what I'm going to say, call and prepare your dream budget now. When your CEO, CFO, company leadership is making their budgets for next year, or whatever timeline we want to say a confident post 280E world is, whenever they are making their budgets, those budgets are going to look different than they have in the past in a 280E context, particularly and obviously for licensed cannabis businesses whom this directly applies to. So if in theory, we should be spending about 9% on marketing, marketers need to speak up and ask our leadership for more budget. And we need to be able to back that up. As I'm a former CMO, now I'm in a, founder and leadership position. And one of the things I've learned is how to communicate using finance, using numbers, right? When you're speaking to leadership that controls the budget and the purse, you need to be able to speak that language. So if you're going to say, hey, I think we should 9x our marketing budget, you need to be able to back that up. Why? And you can use this data. That's partly why I'm sharing it with you today. But from a practical sense, they're also going to ask, tell me more. Just because that's what everyone else is doing, why should we within your organization? Which means right now, whatever you're doing in marketing, you want to be able to demonstrate and show ROI that will support that, even if it's in a small way. And again, I'm not saying this is the 1 to 9 is a budget thing. ROI can be different numbers, different percent, but you want to be able to say, hey, for every dollar we spend, we're getting X back, or for every investment we make, we're getting this back, and here's how it benefits the business. And you want to be able to do that in dollars and cents and numbers. So if you're making your dream budget now and you're going to go ask leadership for a whole lot more to go to marketing, you need to be able to show ROI on what you're doing now and in the near future to say, hey, look, with more resources, I can turn this up. It's also an opportunity to identify what you need the most. So if you're going to ask for that money, right, what are you going to spend it on? Are you just going to spend it on all the same stuff, but spend more? Are you going to say, hey, actually, we need a new marketing coordinator, or we need these 3 or 4 AI tools, or, we're going to do a whole strategy shift. And this is what that means. You want to go through this process proactively, identify what you need and what you would do with more money. This is also to say, I'm only speaking again from the marketing perspective. This is a very, niche and biased group towards marketing, but every other department in your business is going to be asking leadership for money when in a post 280E world, right? Product, packaging, all these other things. Now that you can write off expenses, budget can be dispersed throughout the organization. So you will be, in theory, competing for budget with all the other verticals within your business. So you want to be able to, again, make the case and back it up as much as you can. Okay, so we're going to go into the AMA. Quickly want to see if anyone has questions on anything I just said, and you can throw that in the chat. So many of you submitted questions in advance that I've actually put them on these slides, and I categorized them so that I can kind of answer some questions on one topic, then move on to the next topic. But I also want to make sure, which again was to help me sort of organize my thinking for this. This is the first time we've done this format, but I want to make sure everyone here who also has a question is able to get it answered. So feel free to throw your questions in the chat, and I'm going to do my best to answer what already came in and answer you as we go. But I'm here to answer questions as best I can. So I got my eye on the chat. If you got anything, throw it in there. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going with this. Okay. So got some questions on, and again, this is the pre-submit from you guys and those who registered, the questions you sent in with your registration. So first question, how long do you expect rescheduling and the following interim implementation to last? So rescheduling is a step forward in the legal status of cannabis. It is by no means fully legal. We are not out of, kind of out of the weeds, pun again, with what we are really trying to get towards. My personal take on this is I joined this industry in 2014 and everyone asked then and has asked up until now, when do you think something else will change? Everyone's made guesses. No one really knew. It happened the way it happened this year in terms of this step. I think it's very similar with this question, but I also do think what happens in this election in November is going to be very telling, because all it really takes to get full legalization simply is Congress to pass a law. And if even though cannabis isn't necessarily a Democrat or Republican issue, it does have bipartisan support. As I'm sure we all know, there's a lot going on politically in America, and depending on what plays out in the fall, I think will depend how much this is a priority and how friendly the next government is in relation to this. So hard to say, but I do think we need to watch what happens in November. How will the industry handle FCC and TCPA regulations moving forward with the new classification regarding how they speak about products and communications with customers? So what I understand this question meant, and FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, and TCPA is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So they are not necessarily enforcement agencies, but they do write rules and regulations and standards for how communications happen in marketing in this country as a whole. And they also specifically monitor certain channels. So FCC monitors like where we do broadcast, cable, satellite, and wireless communications. We know broadcast and cable historically, really up until now, have not been cannabis friendly. So it is possible that with Schedule 3, we could see broadcast, open up. We could see possibly cannabis commercials. All of that would fall under, kind of FCC and TCPA. Jurisdiction is not the right word, but you would have to apply those rules. Now, a lot of what they say is in regulation anyways, just in different language. So truth in advertising, you can't like lie in your ads. That's part of the FCC rules. Indecent content restrictions. So you can't put indecent content in front of children. So, we've already got that. Sponsorship identification. We see this on Instagram and social media. If you're paid to promote a product, you have to disclose that. And then same thing with like CAN spam compliance. But if you're reaching out to people on the phone through text or email, they have to opt in. But they have more recently updated those rules where it has to be one-on-one consent. So in order to text me, I have to tell the organization that I consent to you texting me, not through a lead gen form, not through a list they bought through an advertiser, but one-on-one consent. So I do think this will mean more eyes, but also because more channels will open up. And I think those two things are related. But all of this is like, you can find this online, the FCC rules and the TCPA rules. Okay, how will reschedule? And again, if you have questions as I'm going, just throw them in the chat. I want to make sure everybody understands. How will rescheduling affect social equity programs? This is a good question, and I think it could in a few different ways. One, I think as a whole, Schedule 3 could mean more access to funding, both private and public, for cannabis businesses, of which social equity is a section of that. So I think that could open up funding and financial services, which is a good thing. I also think that states could be more confident to legalize. So again, kind of like chicken and egg thing, that if we see more states legalizing now, hold on, does somebody have their, hey, Emily, I don't know whose AI assistant that is, but if you can put it on mute, or we got to kick that out. Okay, where was I? Social equity. So if states are more confident in legalizing, it's possible that they will start with social equity programs. We have seen, right, like in Colorado and Washington, they were some of the first to legalize, didn't have this language, these programs together, but as more states, New York and such, that more recently have implemented, these have become a part of the policy from the start. So again, I do think more expansion in that sense. I also think as a whole, there's going to be an improved ability to track data and metrics across states. The interstate commerce issue is a big one that I think Schedule 3 is going to force that conversation. But I think the ability to track data, understand what's working in a more collaborative way across states will benefit social equity programs. And it is also always possible that Congress could establish baseline criteria for this. So they could also just say, just like the Safe Banking Act, like everyone needs a social equity program and these are the requirements and this is what it means, without actually fully legalizing. So that option is there. Again, will it happen? I'm not sure, but those are things that could. How will advertisements of cannabis and branding be treated now that it's rescheduled? And what does this mean for retail locations? I honestly fundamentally don't think much is going to change. If anything, I think we're taking a step forward in terms of more channels, more access, more publishers being comfortable with cannabis content. We're very limited to who has accepted our cannabis content from a risk perspective of other media and businesses that reach the general public more broadly. I think that will open up more, but I don't think fundamentally branding or advertising will change. The regs are what they are. But I do think, again, we'll see like a step forward in that sense. Okay. So some questions on strategy. Let's see. Okay, how can I better serve the cannabis industry with the knowledge I will gain through the series? I think anyone who wants to serve the cannabis industry should stay curious, always continue learning, don't stop learning and talking to people and truly understanding what problems there are. This industry, we all know the joke that it's like dog years or 1 year is 7 because it changes so fast. But I think anyone who's looking to serve the industry, whether they're new or experienced, can do so by finding the problems that we actually have right now and building solutions to them and making that need met versus creating solutions or products for problems that don't exist or needs that aren't there. Do you think rescheduling will allow Meta and Google to start paid ads? This is a risk assessment on their part. I don't think it inherently will. They can just decide whether they want to or not. And they're such huge companies that, you know, I'm not in those rooms. But I do think it's now less risky. So they will look at it and most likely review it. But again, it's a risk assessment on their part more than anything else. And same with really anyone who would allow paid ads. It's up to their level of risk. And to the same question, kind of same answer here, but can you speak to how this enables brands to more easily hire marketing agencies and other vendors? One thing I think Schedule 3 will do is that a lot of folks who have wanted to get into the space or serve this space haven't, because they've had relationships they didn't want to burn otherwise, whether it was their bank. I know a lot of agencies who are like, we would love to serve cannabis, but we have these massive Fortune 500 clients. And if they know that we're in this space, we could lose their account and we can't do that. It's possible that just now with it moving forward, that might be less of an issue, but don't know. Again, yeah, so I do think more vendors will want to. And from a financial perspective, I know so many agencies who have come in, wanted to serve the industry, and the industry cannot afford their prices and their rates. And they last for maybe 6 months or a year, and then they stop serving cannabis clients and go back to what they were doing before. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze because cannabis businesses could simply not afford what are standard rates for agencies and other third-party vendors. That might change now. Okay. Some questions on retail. Okay, what criteria should dispensaries take into account when measuring ROI? And those who don't use a platform, but their sales are cash. So marketing as a whole is a top of funnel activity. So assuming you're doing an omni-channel strategy, something in social, something in email, ads, events, you want to be able to tie how effective each channel is to the return you're getting and get a baseline of data. And that's just kind of a broad statement about how to think about marketing more broadly. But data that's important to retailers, foot traffic, average order value, basket size? Do you know those things? And then does any of your marketing efforts directly tied to increases or improvements in all of those? So if you have a marketing goal that, hey, we want to increase our average order value by $20, and then you do a campaign to do that, can you actually see that return? So with anything in marketing, you want to understand your goals, understand how you measure them, and then be able to tie it directly to a marketing effort. Whether you are in cash or use a platform doesn't matter that much as long as you have a way to track the data. Technology obviously helps with that significantly, but you need a baseline of data and something to measure against. The other thing with marketing as a, like generally, it is so easy for us to get used to being behind the screen and in the spreadsheet and ask all these theoretical questions when you can literally ask your customers. There's something to be said about focus groups, surveys, asking them at the point of sale. How did you hear about us? Where do you consume information? You know, what matters the most to you? Why do you like or dislike these products? Like, talk to them. People will tell you way more than you think if you actually ask and engage them and make them feel seen and heard. So don't underestimate almost the overly simple answer, which is to just get in conversation with your customers. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but my dog is snoring really loud. What are the top trends in influencing bud tenders? So another thing, ask them. Bud tenders inherently are a lower wage, kind of younger person job that has a lot of high turnover. So I can't really say that there's a, you know, kind of one direct answer to this, but the key to marketing as a whole is loyalty. And loyalty is something you earn, whether it's from your customers or bud tenders. So you need to understand how to get loyalty. And generally speaking, that's understanding and engagement. So how do you get them engaged long-term in your brand? A lot of times folks are doing things like free swag, right? And they get merch and all these things. Does that matter to them? Do they value that? Is the swag they're getting something, you know, that they care about? But honestly, I would ask them, see what's important, but take the next question, go a little bit deeper and understand more about loyalty and not just what is influencing you. Okay. How would you market an ancillary company to dispensary owners? So dispensary owners, my personal take on this is that they are the single hardest group of people to get in touch with in this industry. They are the center point of everything. Brands need to work with them. Ancillary service providers need to work with them. They are the middle person between what happens in the manufacturing of cannabis and then the sale to the customer. There's no other way to do it than to go through the dispensary. So everybody is trying to sell to them, which means they are very discerning when it comes to who they talk to. They tend to not come out much to events and be a little bit harder to reach by design, because as soon as they tell people, oh, I own this dispensary, they're just getting pitched left and right. I've seen it over and over again. So the first thing is to understand their unique problems and what their actual problems are, because they don't want to talk to you or hear from you if you're not helping them do their job, right? It's just like really anything else. But I would just say they're going to be the most discerning, disciplined, like low bullshit, little amount of time to really make your pitch known to them, because everyone is trying to sell something to them more so than I think really any other position outside of maybe CEOs in this space. So you need to be aware of that, but really understand their unique problems and how you can solve them. And I think that's kind of the basis of reaching dispensary owners. Okay. So I got a few budget questions. Next week, we're doing a budget session. So I'm going to more or less defer this to Guillermo, where he can go through all of this in detail. But long story short, I do think there will be more access to funding through banks. I can't really speak more than that. I think we will be able to, and more funding as a whole. And some of the likely deductions, again, like you can, from a marketing perspective, write off your marketing expenses. So print materials, events, team, software, tech, like all these things that in the past had to be creatively accounted for or couldn't be written off at all, will have the opportunity to do that. Okay. What are the latest and greatest tools in the marketing tech stack? Personally, I'm very interested in AI and think that, and not just as a trend thing, but if we really think about it, all the talk around AI right now is around generative AI. That's creating something from nothing or from prompts. That is like 90% of marketing is generating content and disseminating it somewhere. So whether we like it or not, I think marketing is ripe for disruption with AI. And if you don't get on board, you will be left behind whether you like it or not. So I think really understanding AI tools, how they can serve you in marketing and across the funnel, right? There's very specific AI tools that have very niche uses, and then there's broader ones, but also tools you're already using, like we use HubSpot and Canva. They are implementing AI within their systems. So you can look also like, how are my current tech providers that weren't inherently an AI solution before, have they incorporated it? Do they have more features now, or this annoying thing has changed because they're using AI? But one tool I wanted to tell everybody about is like ChatGPT is the go-to for so many looking things up, but I've been using, it's called perplexity.ai, perplexity.ai. And what it does is actually same thing as ChatGPT, but it actually pulls all the articles from Google. So it will cite your sources. ChatGPT does not. It's just like, here's what I think it is. And you don't know where ChatGPT got that information. Perplexity will like pop up those articles and say, based on whatever, those top Google results, this is the answer. So you can kind of go further and check its work. But I really like Perplexity. I just use it now. And then for writing, yeah. I think that's how you spell it. There's SEO.ai, Jasper.ai, like all keyword research, writing blogs, social content, all these things that used to take long amounts of time can now be done instantly. And if you Google AI tools for insert a marketing problem here, you'll get a list. Okay, branding questions. What are best practice policies to consider when creating a brand licensing agreement? Again, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse where you want to ask an attorney about this, but there's also like just standard best practices for brand licensing agreement, because what you're doing is licensing your intellectual property. So you are trusting someone else to create on your behalf. But I would say there's really three main areas, which is the product approval process, the marketing approval process, and then quality control measures. Who says what, who determines who approves what, and you really want that outlined and clear about who's got jurisdiction over which step in those process. And then like any contract or any agreement, you want to be very clear and outline your breakup scenarios in advance, your term and termination. I feel like in cannabis, brand licensing deals have can be prone to breakup, and can be prone to particularly nasty and difficult breakups. So you want to really be tight with that. But there's other factors to consider, right? Your relationship with them, how established they are, how good they are at what they do. But it is essentially an outsourced team. So you do want to consider all those things. Okay, these were just random questions. And then I'm actually going to be able to get through this. So if you have any other questions, please throw them on the chat. What is your take on the THC beverage space? What are the unique risks and opportunities involved with marketing these products? So this data is probably 2 years old, but at least in 2022, early 23, it was only like 2% of the market. I think maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of hype that beverages were going to be bigger than they actually are, in the sense that they'd be the thing that replaces the beer at the backyard barbecue. And I don't think that's played out from a market perspective and what's being manufactured out there. I also think there's something, I don't want to say inherently risky about a drink, but it's a different thing to manufacture. So you just need to consider all those things, but I don't think the demand is where a lot of folks thought it would be. But it is very clearly in that sort of food space, which, there's a lot to consider there. But look at data. Another overall thing I wanted to mention is you can use sources like Brandwatch. There's consumer intelligence platforms out there there's consumer intelligence platforms within the industry. We have some of that data from other folks, point of sale companies, things like that, the data companies that are out there, but that also exists for just the general population. So you can also see how that translates in other beverages or other sectors and get baselines for products you're thinking about and how consumers are behaving and acting as a whole. And then you can kind of marry that with the industry data and come up with your conclusions from there. But it is worth getting data on that because you can hear takes all the time, but if consumers don't want it, like someone has tried this, so learn as much as you can before you invest in a new product vertical. Will we see cannabis in grocery stores or shops outside of dispensaries? I don't think so right now, and I don't think so under Schedule 3. So there are 5 schedules. The higher up it goes, the least harmful it is. So Schedule 5 is like the least, right? And Schedule 1 is the most. Schedule 4 is like Xanax, Ambien, what was another Schedule 4? Valium. You can't just like get those things at the grocery store, and cannabis Schedule 3 is a level higher than that. So I don't think it's coming to grocery stores anytime soon. Schedule 3 is still highly regulated. It's not up there with, heroin in Schedule 1, but it's still up there as far as the schedules go. So I don't think we'll see it. However, we are technically still seeing like Delta 9 products in gas stations. So we are still seeing like higher THC products out there that are easier to get than the way we might have thought about this in terms of like the legal cannabis above 0.03% THC plants. But from a regulatory perspective, I don't think we're going to see cannabis in grocery stores under Schedule 3. And then the last 2 very similar questions: biggest struggle for someone just starting out, and how do you find positions? I think if you're just starting out, again, it's important, like I said in the beginning, to learn as much as you can and come in as informed as you can. A lot of this industry is learning as you go and doing it, but you also don't have to come in completely ill-informed. Network, talk to people, learn what you can, read cannabis media. Again, like everything, understand what problems the industry actually has that need problem solvers for, and see if you can solve those problems. And I think the more useful and helpful you can be in a way that matches with your core competency, the better chance of success you have in this space as a whole. So a lot of folks building solutions and products to things that, in my perspective, don't have, like, there isn't a problem that exists to solve it in that way. And that's really kind of the core of entrepreneurship too. And then how do you find jobs in this space? Join CMA. We don't have a job board, but I do get a lot in my inbox when people are hiring. I will get a lot of emails about that and try to do as much connecting as I can. But again, and it is a tough job market right now, and as a whole, and in cannabis too. But I also think proactive, like find the companies you want to work for, the leaders you want to learn from, who you want to work with. Let them know you exist, you're looking, even if they're not actively hiring. Knowing that they know you when they are, you're more likely to not only have them reach out, but have it be a fit because you've already connected with them. So informational interviews, really working your network and expanding your network is the way as a whole, outside of all the ways that, we already know how to do it through job boards and recruiters and things like that. Okay. Any other questions? Throw them in the chat. I'm here. I know we're at time. I'm happy to answer and stay longer. If anyone else has any other questions that I didn't cover, anything more specific. Again, this is a new format, so I want to see if it was really helpful to you guys. So open to and appreciate your feedback. But if anyone has specific questions or like AMA, I'm here and we can do it now too. Or any other input on anything I've said. I'm open to more perspectives too. Either way, we will edit this video. We will send it out to everybody who registered so you can rewatch it. We'll have it on the back end in the member portal for our members. Because this was a public event, we'll put this on YouTube as well. And then if you are a member, please do register for all the other ones we've got coming up. They are always going to be recorded. They will always be in the member portal, but this is really live time to get your questions answered directly and even more specifically about what it is you might need or problems you might be having. Okay. No other questions? No direct ones? Okay, Emily's going to put some links in the chat so you can register for next week, all the other sessions. If you're not a CMA member and would like to join, you can do so at that link or email membership@marketingcannabis.org. We're happy to tell you about what we do, how you can get involved, see if there might be a fit, connect you, whatever we can do. We do like to help. And members, if there's something you need or content holes you feel like we're missing, please let us know. All of this we do very proactively and reactively based on what you tell us and what you need. So we do take that to heart and really do appreciate your input on content, substance, format, all of that. And yeah, hopefully this will get us rolling into summer. We'll hear that ruling from Ann Milgram soon. The conversation will keep moving forward. And I do think for everyone who's been in this space for a while to celebrate this milestone, I know I've been waiting a long time for any forward progress, and Schedule 3, while it is not the full shebang, it is big forward progress to get off of Schedule 1. It really, really is. And it's going to be a while, I think, until we really see the fruits of that, but we are on the dawn of it, so to speak, and it's a really exciting time for everybody in their business. I know as a marketer who has these conversations all the time, I'm really excited for the membership and for us too, and what that can mean. Okay, yeah, thanks you guys. Yeah, if you want to throw your LinkedIn in the chat, happy to connect with you. You can find me on LinkedIn. My email is, I'll throw it here, but lisa@marketingcannabis.org. If you have any other questions, thoughts, please email me. Happy to talk with you. Otherwise, members, we'll see you next week at Guillermo's session. Hey, Rudy. I'll hang for a little bit, but yeah, if anyone else has questions, I'll just hang out for a few more minutes.